It's a town where the sun never rises, where the wind whispers secrets and the shadows dance. It's a town that only appears to those who have nowhere else to go, and once you enter, there is no leaving. I learned about this town from my grandfather. He was a quiet man, always sitting by the fire with a distant look in his eyes. As a child, I was fascinated by his stories. He would tell me about the old days, about places he had been and people he had met. But there was one story he never told until the very end. On his deathbed, he called me close and whispered, "There's a place you must never go. It's called Somnus. Promise me you'll stay away." I promised, but curiosity gnawed at me. After his funeral, I searched through his things and found an old tattered journal. The pages were yellowed with age, the ink faded but still legible. It was his diary from when he was a young man, and as I read, I began to understand his fear. The entries began normally enough, accounts of his daily life, his travels, and his work. But as I read on, the tone changed. He wrote of strange dreams, of hearing whispers in the night. He described a town he visited that wasn't on any map, a town called Somnus. March 3rd, 1952, I had the dream again. The one with the shadows. They whispered my name, telling me to come to them. I woke up drenched in sweat. This is the third night in a row. I'm starting to worry. March 10th, 1952, I found the town. I was lost, driving aimlessly after another sleepless night. The road seemed to stretch on forever, shrouded in fog. Then, out of nowhere, Somnus appeared. It was like stepping into another world. Everything was eerily quiet, and the air felt heavy. March 11th, 1952, the people here are strange. They don't speak much, and when they do, it's in hushed tones. Their eyes are hollow, as if they've seen things they can't forget. I tried to leave today, but the road out of town just looped back around. I'm trapped. March 15th, 1952, the dreams are getting worse. I see faces in the shadows, hear screams that echo in my mind. During the day, the town is shrouded in perpetual twilight. At night, the shadows come alive. I don't know how much more of this I can take. As I read my grandfather's words, a chill ran down my spine. I felt as if I could hear the whispers he described, faint and distant. Determined to learn more, I decided to find Somnus. I knew it was a terrible idea, but something compelled me to go. I set out one night, driving through the fog-covered roads my grandfather had described. I drove for hours, the landscape growing more surreal and otherworldly with each passing mile. Eventually, I saw it, a sign that read, "Welcome to Somnus." The town was just as he had described. The streets were empty, the buildings old and decaying. There was no sign of life, yet I felt eyes watching me from the shadows. I parked my car and began to walk, the silence pressing down on me like a weight. As I explored, I saw flickers of movement out of the corner of my eye, shadows that seemed to dart away when I turned to look. I reached the town square where a large clock tower loomed overhead. The hands of the clock were frozen at midnight. I entered a nearby building, an old hotel. The lobby was covered in dust, and the air was thick with decay. As I walked through the halls, I heard whispers echoing around me. They grew louder, more insistent, and I realized they were calling my name. I followed the sound to a room at the end of the hall. The door was ajar, and I pushed it open, revealing a small, dimly lit room. In the center stood a mirror, its surface cloudy and cracked. As I approached, I saw my reflection, only it wasn't me. It was a twisted, hollow version of myself, with eyes full of despair. The reflection began to speak, its voice a raspy whisper. "You shouldn't have come here. Now you're one of us." I stumbled back, the room spinning around me. The shadows closed in, and I felt myself being pulled into the mirror. Everything went black. When I awoke, I was lying on the floor of the hotel room. The mirror was gone, and the whispers had ceased. I staggered to my feet and ran out of the building, desperate to escape. But the town had changed. The streets twisted and turned, leading me in circles. As night fell, the shadows came alive. They moved with a life of their own, creeping closer and closer. I could feel their cold touch, hear their hollow laughter. I knew I was trapped, just like my grandfather. Days turned into weeks, and I lost all sense of time. I wandered the streets, avoiding the shadows, trying to find a way out. But Somnus had me in its grip. The whispers grew louder, filling my mind with their dark secrets. One night, as I hid in an abandoned house, I found a hidden door in the basement. It led to a tunnel that stretched deep underground. With no other options, I followed it, hoping it would lead to freedom. The tunnel was long and dark, the air growing colder with each step. I felt the walls closing in, the whispers echoing in the darkness. Finally, I emerged into a vast cavern, filled with eerie, glowing crystals. In the center stood an ancient altar, covered in strange symbols. As I approached, the whispers grew deafening. I could feel their power, their malevolence. Desperate, I reached out and touched the altar, hoping to break the town's curse. A blinding light engulfed me, and I felt myself being pulled through space and time. When I opened my eyes, I was standing on the road outside Somnus. The town was gone, vanished as if it had never existed. I drove home in a daze, my mind reeling from the experience. I knew I could never speak of what had happened. No one would believe me. But I knew the truth. Somnus was real, and it was always waiting, lurking in the shadows. Years have passed since that night, but the memories haunt me still. I hear the whispers sometimes, in the dead of night, calling me back. I know I can never return, but the town will always be a part of me. So if you ever find yourself lost on a foggy night, be wary of the road you take. For Somnus is always there, just out of sight, waiting for the next soul to claim. And once you enter, you will never leave. Remember, some places are meant to be forgotten, and some secrets should never be uncovered. Somnus is one of them, a town that never sleeps, a town that never lets go.